All right, we're live. I'm Noah Volz. This is DC to Be Revolution, where we think big to live large. Today, I have the rare opportunity to talk to Dr. Dr Pompa. He's an international health expert, a speaker, an author, and he's educating doctors and their patients about the 5 R's of true cellular detoxification. Thanks, Dr. Pompa, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So let's get right down to it. What are the 5 R's, and how do they help doctors and patients?
Yeah, years ago, I became very sick myself, which is a whole nother story.
I'd love to hear the story if you want to tell it.
I'll say this to answer your question, and then I'll go back to that. The 5 R's came out of that, and the 5 R's became a roadmap to how to fix a cell, how to detox a cell, and ultimately is an answer for why people really don't feel well today. And I have a mantra today: to get well, you have to fix the cell. And true cellular detox is now something I'm known for. I've taught several hundred doctors around the country this concept, and it is an answer. It is an answer. I can't say we have all the answers, but we have something very unique that has changed my life. And really, that's how I became called to this mission.
Yeah, and could you talk a little bit about your story? You mentioned briefly, kind of how you came to this conclusion, or how you were kind of blessed with an opportunity to discover this. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, it was back in 1999, early 2000, that I became very fatigued and didn't know why. And unfortunately, I went from fatigue to worse things because I thought I was just overtraining. I was cycling a lot. As it turned out, it wasn't so simple. I had taken time off, and I realized that things are getting worse. I was getting headaches even just pedaling on my bike 5 miles, whereas I could easily ride 100, and now I couldn't, and I was getting wiped out. And then it went to insomnia. Then it went to panic attacks. Then it went to basically being allergic to everything in my world, including every food, and trying to figure it out like most people, right? Trying to eliminate this. Oh, it's dairy, it's this, it's that. And it just wasn't working. And I was getting worse, not better. And life as I know it really became impossible and came to a screeching halt. I had a very busy chiropractic practice at that time. I was seeing 800 plus visits a week, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, things were, just like I said, tailing out of control. We had 2 young boys at the time, and it literally became impossible to even be the dad I needed to be. I became even sound sensitive. My adrenals were shot. I couldn't handle any stress, not even sound, believe it or not. I remember watching, I was from Pittsburgh. I lived in Pittsburgh at that time, watching a Steeler game where, some people watching the playoffs, and I couldn't handle the excitement. I literally couldn't do it. I couldn't go to movies because the noise would just send me into anxiety. So that's a small picture of the symptoms I dealt with, but, only to get you to understand that, it was very bizarre. And I didn't know it was wrong. I was researching when I was up in the middle of the night, not being able to sleep. And one day I came across Mad Hatter's disease. And if you recall what that is, it's people making felt hats were using mercury actually to do that and to attenuate some of the molds and things. But they became known as Mad Hatters, right? I mean, they went nuts. That was me. I mean, I literally had all these symptoms. So I was encouraged because at least I found something that like, this seems like it. I went down to Allegheny General Hospital, head of toxicology, the best, ran all this blood work, you name it, and a mercury test, negative. And my blood work was surprisingly normal. My thyroid numbers were good, even though my hair was falling out. I mean, all these disastrous things. I wanted, tell me I had cancer, tell me anything, just so I knew what I was up against. So I was very disappointed. It wasn't until about a year later that I had read this endocrinologist book because I knew my adrenals and thyroid were not right. But I also identified, I thought it was more my pituitary, the control of them that was really messed up. I just didn't know what was wrong. But every time I would address my adrenals or thyroid, some things would get better, some things would get worse. But he said to me, Dan, I think you have mercury poisoning. And I said, I thought so too. But unfortunately, got a blood test back. It was negative. He said, that's the wrong test. That's if you had acute mercury poisoning. I think you have chronic. And so he said, do this test. And it was a urine challenge where you take something, pull the metal out of the tissue. And I did. And then there lied my metals. I said, well, where do you think I got this? He said, do you have any dental work done around the time this all went down? And I said, I may have, because I had gold filling. They took out 2 amalgam fillings. Those are silver fillings, which, by the way, contain 50% mercury. I still had 6 in my mouth, but they took out those 2, put the gold in. Well, I looked at the dates of when that work was done, called the dentist. And it was days after that that actually my first symptoms began. I thought it was the anesthesia. I thought it was, the fact that, I was reacting to that. I don't take medications, living the philosophy. I never, take drugs. Maybe it was that. Anyways, it took me on a long journey of trying to figure out how to get these out safely and how to, more importantly, get it out of my brain. Studies then showed that I had read after that the amount of fillings you have in your mouth is proportional to how much mercury you have in your brain. And matter of fact, mothers, there's the duress study. The number of fillings in your mouth, moms, is proportional to how much mercury is in your baby's brain. And that's on biopsy studies. So I figured out what was wrong with my pituitary and my adrenals and my thyroid. Obviously, it was the control tower. So researching how to get them out right, and more importantly, how to fix myself. So really, I realized it was real detox has to occur at the cell. I wasn't going to get well from a colon cleanse, which I had done, many of, infrared saunas, doing them. I mean, I had done everything, Chlorella, you name it, cilantro, which almost put me into the psycho ward. Realizing that most of that is weak binders, that you have to really upregulate cell function, and that's where the 5 R's kind of came from, to really what true detox really is. And even turn off the bad genes that got turned on because of the toxic exposures. But so, it was just, I was really good at reading literature and applying it. Honestly, I got myself well after some years. And what I teach today is like what true detox is. I call it true cellular detox. We have to get the cell working. We have to open up downstream detox pathways. And we have to use true binders that safely and effectively carry the toxins safely all the way out of the body, because cilantro doesn't do that. Chlorella doesn't do that. And colon cleanses, most of the 10-day cleanses that people do, they're too far downstream. You have to get the cell working and then make sure these toxins are going out. So that's what I teach. And there's a preparatory phase, there's a body phase, and most importantly, there's a brain phase. And that's how I got my life back. And that's what I teach doctors now.
Beautiful. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the brain.
Yeah. I mean, true to our profession, to what I think most people watching this believe, is that in us, there is an innate intelligence, right, that functions. We can only remove interference, and the body ultimately does the healing. And I knew that, right? I knew that taking thyroid supplements, adrenal supplements, vitamins wasn't the answer. Although some of it helped me function better, but it was removing it out of my brain, that mercury, that did give me my life back. And I preach and teach that to, not just chiropractors, MDs, DCs, I mean, anyone who's open to that. I believe functional medicine, as we call it today, I don't like the word, really is just about giving more vitamins and minerals. And again, I'm not against it. It's just not how we're going to get a generation of children and people today well. We have to remove the interference, and ultimately it's in that nerve system. So the brain phase is going deep enough into the brain, crossing the blood-brain barrier with true binders, in a process that supports the safe removal of the toxins. Nobody's doing it. I believe I got sick for this very purpose, no doubt. And I actually pointed to that family back there. There's 7. There's a lot of story there that I probably don't have time to tell. But my wife, her mother died of cancer, uterine cancer. 10 years before that, she had breast cancer that she got standard treatments with. And she had very high lead levels that she never got to the cause. And it created hormone disruption. My wife was heading down that same road. Her methylation is a process that some of us have heard that word, right? Methylation, MTHFR. Well, my wife, she wasn't getting rid of toxic estrogens, just like her mother. We would support that methylation pathway that helps do that, but it wasn't working. We ended up realizing her lead level was so high. That's what was depleting her methylation. And fixing that fixed her hormones. But the other kids here, and I have 3 of those kids there that are biological, they all got her lead upon pregnancy, because most of the lead's stored in the bone. And during pregnancy, that lead comes out. And where does it go? Into the children, just like her fillings. So those poor kids were loaded with mercury and lead. They were never vaccinated, but they had all these disruptions. And so we ended up having to detox them, luckily with the process that I learned in myself. And then there's 2 other children there, right there in the plaid shirts, that we adopted. Dylan, the boy there, they were twins. At age 7, their parents tragically died, and we adopted them. He was damaged through the process of vaccinations, and he ended up on the autism spectrum, sensory integration, Asperger's. Dylan's 20 now, and you would never know he had that problem as a kid. So I always like to say he was my second patient somewhere in there, but that whole family went through a lot. And then Olivia, who's going to be a chiropractor, she's 20, she's the twin. She was protected by estrogen, like most kids are today. And by the way, that's why there's more boys on the autism spectrum. Testosterone has an amplifying effect on the neurotoxicity. Estrogen has more of a protective effect. However, caution, because she became sensory integration later as a teenager and started with symptoms. And so she ended up having to go through true cellular detox. So from pain to purpose is that whole family behind me. I mean, all of us have a story. And that's just kind of lightly, it makes it sound a lot easier than it was, trust me. But, from pain to purpose has been my mantra, because everything I teach and do really has come out of that brief, quick story that I just told.
Yeah, I think the deepest lessons we have come from pain. You talked a lot about heavy metals. Are there other things that True Cellular Detox focuses on?
It does. The couple of the binders that we use, one called Cyto Detox, and it's a true binder. It grabs on. It's able to go into the cell. It's able to cross the blood-brain barrier, but it becomes that vehicle that we need as we upregulate cell function to make sure that it goes all the way out of the body. And in the brain phase, we even use some fat solubles to make sure that we're getting deep enough. And then that vehicle, Cyto Detox, brings it all the way out of the body. But it also binds something called a biotoxin. Biotoxins are another big reason people are sick today. Heavy metals are obviously one of them, and what we inherit from our parents, honestly, in that heavy metals. But people today are living in moldy homes. The way they built construction, we end up seeing a lot of people who are very sick today with neurotoxic illness from moldy homes and hidden infections like Lyme disease. That's a biotoxin. So that particular binder will bind up those biotoxins as well. It will prioritize the metals though. We also use another true binder within my system that just stays in the gut. And it is meant to basically stop autointoxication. So when people have mold exposures or hidden infections like Lyme and other things, a lot of it's trapped up in the hepatic biliary sludge. What is that? Okay, the bile is in the liver, gallbladder, and it's meant to digest fat, but it holds a lot of the toxins. And your body's designed to reabsorb that bile for digestion. And the problem is it reabsorbs the toxins right along with it. So we use in this system that I discussed, we put this holding agent called bind actually in the gut. And we use that bind as a catcher's mitt to make sure it doesn't auto-intoxicate. That we don't auto-intoxicate, but it will pull a lot of those biotoxins out of that bile. A guy named Richie Shoemaker was doing a process years ago, and still is, with an old medication for cholesterol called cholestyramine. And it was just a binding agent that bound the bile complex and brought cholesterol out. But he realized it grabbed biotoxins like mold, or the biotoxin from mold, I should say, not to reabsorb. And that's kind of where I became realizing that this works for other toxins, not just biotoxins, and it has to be a part of real detox. So, I can't take claim for the process, but we revamped it, redid it, and applied it to when we upregulate cell function. Now we keep these toxins from so I put it into my system, and that is part of what we call true cellular detox.
Awesome. I really feel like there's kind of a crisis in modern day medicine. How do you feel like True Cellular Detox and the 5 R's kind of deal with this almost crisis that where we're, living longer, but we're sicker than we've ever been before?
Yeah, I think the younger generation is going to be the generation that doesn't live longer. I mean, that's how bad we got. But you're right. My generation, I'm 51. I always say, look, my parents started getting sick in their 60s, and 70s with degenerative diseases. My generation started getting sick in their 30s. The generation today, perhaps your generation, is getting sick. I mean, they're sick in their 20s, really. Today, it's teenagers. So, we have a massive problem on our hands. Medicine today, as we know, is throwing more poison at it, if you will. There's a time and a place for medication. However, it's nowhere near at the root of why people are sick today. I will even criticize alternative medicine, and I have to the same. It is about removing interference and then the body doing the healing. And we don't see that in alternative medicine either. They're basically using supplements, to act as medications, removing symptoms at best. Okay, there's not as many side effects, right? So I'm not going to put the two in the same category. Medication arguably is the number one killer right now in America, right? Okay, the number 3 if we are conservative, but the point is that to get well today, we have to really grab onto our philosophy and understand, I believe God is bringing an answer, through the chiropractic profession as the number one. Why? Because we hold a philosophy, that is transformed, everyone that comes in contact with us, that you have to get upstream. You have to remove the interference. Adjusting, no doubt, is removing physical interference off of that innate intelligence, right? We know that. We've seen the miracles. Why are we getting less miracles adjusting people today? Simple. Chiropractic hasn't changed. Subluxation hasn't changed, just as dangerous. But chemical subluxation, if you will, is affecting people like no time in the history of man, especially the younger generation. Listen, your generation has been exposed to something I didn't as a child. Glyphosate. Glyphosate, the number one active ingredient in the herbicide, Roundup, and now others, that is literally ubiquitous in our environment. It's, everywhere we look, everywhere, food, you name it. What it's doing, according to studies, is allowing these other neurotoxins like heavy metals and biotoxins to enter deeper into the brain. That's why the brain cycle is the key. So we have the generation, we got our mother's lead, their mercury. We were exposed to lead and mercury. And now this generation is exposed to this chemical called glyphosate that opens up the gut, allows more toxins through, more autoimmune occurring. And it opens up this gut basically as well. The blood-brain barrier is no different than this barrier here in the gut. The two are very similar. That is opening up and allowing these toxins to cross deeper into the brain. This is the problem with kids today, and we haven't even yet seen what's coming. The epidemic is here right now at biblical proportions. I'm telling you, we have massive issues, and I have to believe God is calling a group of people to answer the prayers and the cries of these children today, and many other sick people like me.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about what's the problems that we're seeing in the world, and something that you just said really reminded me that the ultimate essence is to unlock each of our individual potential. And so can you talk about maybe some stories or some experiences you've had where through going through the cellular detox program, people have been able to unlock their brain's potential, unlock their lives' potential, and really make a meaningful and purposeful contribution to the world.
You know, I have files of right here, I'm looking at them, of amazing stories. And I do something on my website, which is dr, like Dr. Dr, then my last name, pompa.com. I do something where I interview some of the world's best scientists, leading experts in every area to really proof text a lot of the things that I talk about. But I've also interviewed many of my own clients from around the world with debilitating illnesses that were never going to get well, if you will, that now tell a different story of how their life changed and through that detox process. And people can go there and watch them and be encouraged because, look, I'm witness, to the uncurable being cured. And again, only the body can cure if we remove the interference, right? No doctor does, but you hear story after story of these degenerative conditions, that were restored. And so, go there, watch Cellular Healing TV. And that's where I've interviewed. There's hundreds of interviews, in some of which are testimonies of what you just asked.
Beautiful. I'm glad that you brought that full circle. So I just wanted to leave it open to you. If there's anything you wanted to add, I feel like this is a really good kind of stepping stone for students who are interested in this aspect of chiropractic and unlocking innate's potential in this way. Is there anything that you want to add that kind of speak to the students at large who are in chiropractic school right now?
I started teaching seminars some years ago because I realized, I need an army. God needs an army to be equipped with this, what really is driving this epidemic. We named it Health Centers of the Future years ago because we realized that Health Center of the Future is one that removes physical subluxation and chemical, and I would add emotional as well. All of these things are really, the body doesn't know the difference of these stressors. And when they're present in what I call a perfect storm, when you have a physical, emotional, chemical, and any combination of those, it becomes a perfect storm. And if you remember the movie, you have three weather fronts come together and it causes a catastrophic storm, that happens, they say, every 100 years. Well, maybe that was happening once every 100 years ago. But today, this is happening every day where we have these stressors coming together. And the body really doesn't know the difference between them. Stress is stress, physical, chemical, or emotional. And what's happening is then a gene gets turned on of susceptibility. It can happen to all. We all have them, right? We know now that genes are turned on. It's not that you got, diabetes because your parents had it. No, it's because that gene got triggered. So this is one, I compare this to a three-legged stool. So imagine, if you will, what's the deal with a three-legged stool? You have to have all three legs there for it to stand up. So this is the cause of disease, but it also is the answer. The solution lies in the same analogy. So you have genes that get triggered, turned on of susceptibility. Maybe it's autoimmune, right, of some sort. You name the illness. But we have the stressors, if you will, the center leg, that trigger that. And then lastly, we know that there's this microbiome component, bacteria that we know now control our immune system, how this brain works, all of it, that is now being affected in so many people from glyphosate and other chemicals. This is a new problem. So when that happens, now there's this disruption in the immune system where you can't even turn your own immune system off. We have everyone getting autoimmune. But the point is this, is these three things are happening today, and that's why we have so much illness. The answer lies there too. So a lot of my 5 R's in cellular healing work is about turning off that epigenetic component. However, we'll never do it unless we remove the stressors that bioaccumulate over the course of our lifetime. So these chemicals like heavy metals and biotoxins, etc., they accumulate. And by the way, so do our emotional traumas. Bruce Lipton showed, and I interviewed him on Cell TV, our thoughts and traumas direct cellular function and information and turn on bad genes. So we have to address those in a health center of the future. And we also have to deal with the microbiome. And I teach these what I call ancient healing strategies, because you're not going to fix the microbiome today just by giving probiotic. I wish it were so easy. So I teach these ancient healing strategies. I put all of these things together in what I'm now teaching as a multi-therapeutic approach. And that's how we're addressing this epidemic. And again, that three-legged stool just kind of puts the cause and the protocols, if you will, in context. But so, I mean, a health center of the future, my challenge to the students watching is understand what's causing disease today. You have an opportunity with a philosophy of removing interference, and letting the body express that healing. Understand that the interference can go beyond physical, chemical, and emotional. But if you're addressing all of it, that's a health center of the future. And that's what I believe this generation is being called to. It's being called to far more than when I came out of school.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for, speaking to the future, because I feel like all of us feel the weight of the responsibility being in school and serving people, to the highest potential. So, I love the analogy of the three-legged stool and how you bring that in. Besides your website, drpompa.com and Cellular TV, are there other good ways for students to get in touch with you, interact with you? Are you, on Facebook or Twitter, or are there any other avenues for people to reach out if they're inspired about this and want to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, through my website is the best way. I have a team, that's devoted to answering as many questions as we can of people. I mean, I get inundated, obviously. I have clients and people all around the world because of the web presence that I've been blessed to have, that ask a lot of questions. And look, my goal is now I've taught enough doctors around the country, and we need more students. My next seminar is in Atlanta, Georgia, beginning of May. And we'll have a lot of life students from Life East, if you will, pouring into the seminar. But I think my new passion has become your generation. This generation now that's in school to hear this message, and that's why I really wanted to do this. And we missed it the first time, and I'm like, no, I told my wife, who does my intimate schedule here, I'm like, you got to make that one happen, because that's the students. They need to hear this message. They do. It's a different world today. And, so yeah, I mean, go to my website, and like I said, we have a team, and believe me, I answer many of those questions still. So, I'm there trying to be in touch with as many as I can. And I'll be in CalJam, in your neck of the woods, coming up here at the end of February. I'm one of the speakers, and I have an amazing message, let me tell you, that I'm bringing to that group that, God is just putting on my heart that I'm bringing. So, be there for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I reiterate that. That was part of the reason I had you. I kind of looked at the CalJam lineup. Billy D is always bringing great people. So, yeah, definitely. I'll be at CalJam, and hopefully we can get a lot of other students from up here to come as well.
And I want to encourage the kids also. Patrick Gintempo is doing a vaccine summit right now. Grab a hold of it, find it somehow, some way. The vaccine summit, I think, is very important right now, is what's going on in California and about. I'm part of that interview. I think I'll be the last interview as far as the solution and what we're doing, because we talk about educating people about vaccinations. However, 95, 98, 99% of our audience has been vaccinated. So what are we doing about it? I mean, this is what true cellular detox is, and Patrick and I bring that message. But he interviewed Robert Kennedy, who has now just been appointed on Trump's committee to basically, are vaccines safe? Let's find out. Let's do it safer. So that's a big game changer. And he just had interviewed Robert right before that appointment. He interviewed Wakefield. I mean, there's some amazing, powerful people in this area. And again, when we look at what vaccines are doing, we're looking at a major source of neurotoxicity that's really changing the epigenome as we know it in the human race. This is a big problem, and again, I've had direct experience with this, with my son Dylan, myself, and this is a growing issue. watch the vaccine summit, get educated. We are part of bringing an answer, an awakening to the American people. Please watch it, please.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder and for that call to action. I've been hearing a lot about it. I haven't checked it out yet, but yeah, that's a really important reminder. Yeah. All right, well, I think that's it for us today. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Daniel Pompa. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for everything that you brought. So this has been DC2B Revolution. Consider subscribing to the channel, liking this video, leave comments below. If you have more questions, please visit drpompa.com and ask any questions, or check out all the amazing resources that he has there. The website is full of remarkable information. So I inspire all of you to check that out. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.